Morning, I'm Iain McIlwee and I am CEO of FIS, Finishes and Interior Sector. We are the trade body for the £10 billion finishes and interior sector. Our focus is the interior system of the buildings. That's the walls, the ceilings, the floors and the fixtures and some of the external finishes too. Basically, our members is the supply chain that turns structure into homes, hospitals, schools, warehouses, factories or hotels or even pubs. We work in all types of buildings. The survey is all the research we're doing. It's all about trying to find a new path. So how we shift the conversation of construction from talking about a destination like modern methods of construction or BIM into how we modernise the way that we construct. So the whole point of the research is to have an open conversation with the supply chain to ensure that we understand what we're at or where we're at instead of knocking lumps off each other, to try and bring a bit of empathy to the whole conversation. It's genuine and exercise and active listening together, insight into where the challenges are and how the people doing the do think we can evolve. So we've kicked it off, what we wanted to do was bring a bit of academic rigor and not just talk to our lot. We're a supply chain organisation, so we've got good reach into the sector, but not everyone in the sector is a member of FIS. So we wanted to reach beyond our membership and bring a bit of academic rigor. So we've got the dream team really. We've brought in Professor Green from the University of Reading, and he's got so much knowledge in this whole arena. We've learned loads from working with him. So we've got Stuart, who's there to help us interrogate and understand it and just bring a bit of academic rigor to the proceedings. And we're working with AMA Research and Barbour ABI, who have got huge reach into that wider sector and really are the masters of gathering data. So we've sort of divided the piece of work into two. There's this big data gathering exercise, and then Stuart's doing interviews with people in the sector to help us quantify it. So that's really the Z team. It's FIS with a passion and desire to try and jog the conversation on about change, and it's Reading University, or University of Reading, I should say, with their academic rigor and their sort of ability to look at the problem from a different angle, and AMA Research with their reach. So I think we've really assembled that dream team. I think the purpose of the survey is to ground the discussions on the future. Discussions about the future needed to be grounded by the reality of here and now, and get an honest view of where we're at. Now, we've traced so many of the conversations in terms of, we talk about transformation in construction all the time. We talk about faster, greener, better, all of these things that the construction industry wants to achieve. But you can't necessarily have everything at once, and faster, greener, better may require us to slow down a little bit in certain parts of the work we do. And certainly the fit-out sector's become rapid. I mean, somebody asked me to describe this sector in a word once, and I was sort of scrubbing away with all of the different myriad of things. And I came up with fast, because it is, when you step into this marketplace, you realize how fast it is. And if we think about the building as a whole, you've sort of got the structure, you've got the facade, you've got the roof, you've got the M&E, all the electrical bits and plumbing bits and bobs. And then you've got this interior system, and it happens very late in the process, very late in the program, and it's procured potentially in a different way to some of those other parts of the packages. So we're trying to explore the logic of why we're procured in a slightly different way, and why some of the time constraints exist around what are the time constraints, and why some of those time constraints exist around the way that our packages are procured, so we can potentially understand how we can unravel it and pick it back to a point where it maybe works a little bit better. I mean, it's important to us because we exist to raise standards and support the supply chain. So we don't exist to make money for anyone else. We're not a profit-making business. We're there to help. And as I said just now, there's a lot of talk about transformation, faster, greener, better, but it tends to fall into two camps. You've got the Bridge of the Orca, or Jack and his magic beans, are the two conversations that we seem to be having all the time. Now, the Orca's the boat. Many of you, certainly those as old as me, will remember watching Jaws. And there's that famous scene where you've got Quint and Matt, and they're bonding over the scars that they've all got. So, and I think a lot of the conversations in construction can be a little bit like that. This is where the main contractor took my leg in '74. We're not sort of moving that conversation on. We're repeating and we're pointing blame at different parts of the supply chain. It's never our fault; it's the rest of the supply chain. And then you've got the magic bean conversation, where we put our faith in the answers modern methods of construction, the answers Industry 4.0, the answers are clerk of works. Now, all of those things exist, but the question for me is, they're there, why aren't we using them to fix the market? So there's lots of great work going on. It isn't innovation, it isn't initiative, or it isn't endeavour that we lack as a sector. Sometimes I hear the construction sector is resistant to change. I don't believe it is. I think the construction sector is changing all of the time, but much of our change is happening within the projects, within the programs, because everything's become a bit of a mess and a muddle in our desire to get it done a little bit too quickly. So I don't believe the sector is resistant to change, certainly not as an ideology. But with no pipeline in front of you, with contracts awarded at short notice, everything moving at breakneck speed, it's almost impossible to change direction at times. So all of your momentum is going in one direction to deliver the requirements of the project that you're working on. And it's so hard to look sideways. It's so hard to look forward, because the projects are disproportionately big to the size of businesses that we are in construction. And it only takes one or two to go south, and you're not a business in construction anymore. So we chase the problem back to procurement. And because procurement's where you set the price parameters, procurement's where you set the time parameters, and procurement's where you set the relationships off. And we want to start looking at the gap between what's become normal and what should be normal. So we've evolved to this point, but we maybe need to evolve away in a new direction. Some fit out projects can be, some can be less, but you can end up with a design and build fit out project that's 6 weeks from notifications. We could talk about sniff the site, from sniff of a job to boots on site is 6 weeks, and that's design, tendered, procured. But by the way, I want that to be sustainable. By the way, I've got exacting thermal, acoustic, and fire requirements that need to be delivered. By the way, you're going to have to work around this. By the way, there's some issues getting on site. By the way, if you want to get waste off site, we've got nowhere to store it. There's all of these. It's an incredibly logistical, complex thing, construction, and we tend to break it all down to screwing boards to walls. So we don't think about that wider process. We certainly don't address it properly in procurement, and everything is kind of ends up. We end up in this dance of how long do they think? How long do I think they think it should take? So I'll try and get it. I'll address my tender documents to say, well, they want it done in 6 weeks, so I'll write the document around 6 weeks. What price are they looking for? I've got to get it within a price. So everything's always been squeezed. And sometimes we feel the interior system is becoming like the insides of the TARDIS. We can't fit all of this into that outside, and we certainly can't do it as effectively as we possibly could in that time frame. My colleague Joe, he always talks about. He's got a great quote that he uses, and effectively, it's nothing will change to the point where it's harder not to change. And I think we're getting to that point where it's harder not to change. There is this kind of pressure valve that seems to be something that we need to release. You chase it back and chase it back. We need to release something at that procurement point. Now, construction has had a pretty torrid time in the past 3 years. So you've had the pandemics and the inflation, and that's common to all businesses. The other profound effect for us is the Grenfell tragedy, which has rocked the industry to its core, and it's created trust issues, which I think are also manifesting themselves at the procurement level. So as we try and rebuild to faster, greener, better, we've got this transformation, changing culture. They've all become sort of a mantra for the sector. But again, they can't be picture postcards of the future. They've got to be grounded on what do we do next. What are the barriers, and how do we work together as a supply chain to overcome those barriers? We talk about at FIS. We often talk about I, we, they. So I can do this. I can do this right now. We together maybe need to look at that, because that's going to require a bit of a consistent change, a bit of a consistent approach. And by the way, they need to help us, and they might need to give us another week. That might be the answer to all of our problems. It might be as simple as that. We just need another week in this program, and that's something that needs to be discussed at procurement level, because if you want sustainability, we've got to arrange a proper fit out, a strip out audit. So faster, greener, better doesn't always mean faster straight away. And realistically, at the moment, I think because everybody's kind of panicking, there's this trust issue, there's all of these things coming to a head at once. The massive inflation is being squeezed through the supply chain. Faster started to become about cracking the whip. It's not. It doesn't feel like we're actually collaborating to accelerate in the way we should collectively. Pockets of it, but not collectively. So, if you keep cracking the whip, eventually you will kill the horse. And I'm sort of getting to the point now where our concern is that if we carry on as we are going to kill the horse. What are we looking to achieve from the survey? I want to change the world, right? But realism and change is genuinely at the heart of it. So at the moment, 17% of dry lining, according to a study we did, was rework. 17% was rework, and you have to ask the question why. And our theory is that we don't allow time for design. We're getting the programs wrong in our desire to overlap stages 4 and 5 of the REBA planner works because we've got to accelerate because we need to be faster. And effectively, we're leaving SMEs with too much risk and way too little support in managing that. So you say that 17%, 17%. Think of the waste of materials in the net zero era. 17%. 17%. Think of the waste of labour when we're suffering from most profound shortage that this industry's ever known. That this industry has ever known because of the dramatic changes we've had to the way that we can recruit and we can assemble workforces. I mean, 17% is unacceptable, right? So what we're hoping to do is start to build the data and the evidence to show that the behaviours are not helping the industry to be faster, greener, better. In fact, they're tripping us up. So, there's been a lot of work done in this area. I mean, I know Dame Judith Hackett in Building a Safer Future said something like improving the procurement process will play a large part in setting the tone for any construction project. So that's great. But again, construction isn't one homogenous thing. Different packages are dealt with in different ways. If they think of those 5 core systems of a building, again, the roof, the structure, the M&E, the facade, and the interior system, they're not all procured in the same way. So they are, whilst there's commonalities, there are differences in the way that we address procurement. And that's what we want to interrogate. We want to take our bit of the supply chain and start looking at the detail, the difference, and start to produce some data around some of those behaviours and potentially the output of some of those behaviours. And importantly, ask the question, again, of the people doing the do, who are living and breathing it and stuck in those projects, unable at times to step outside of the project to collaborate, to give them an opportunity, to give them a voice in this, to say, actually, our life would be a little bit easier if, or by the way, we could do this a bit differently. So it's this sort of opportunity for everyone to feed into a collective piece of research that's not being done to find a scapegoat, that's not being done to prove it's all somebody's fault, but it's actually about looking at how we can work together as a supply chain. And remember the bit that we're in. If you think again of those 5 systems, there's probably more trade packages in our system than any other part of construction. You've got trades like dry lining, ceiling fixing, plastering, wire stopping, carpeting, joinery, all coming together to deliver something. And it does potentially need to be thought about a little bit differently. When we're talking about collaborative systems, there's more people we need to collaborate. The interfaces, the abutments, the fixings in our sector all need to be thought about. And sometimes, we feel like we're a bag of bits at the end of the job that nobody's given attention to. So I guess it's to stamp our foot a little bit and say we need to think about the interior system. We need to think about it as a system, and to back that up with a little bit of evidence and a little bit of data to show that that some of the behaviours at the moment are leading to suboptimal outcomes. How can people help? Fill it in. That's how you can help. So whatever your views, we're not trying to overlay this with any sort of, at the moment, Stuart's there, the academic rigour Stuart brings is to start interrogating the data, interrogating your views, and starting to understand the market a little bit better. So it's an understanding exercise. So the best thing you can do for us right now is fill in the survey. The second best thing you can do is share it with everybody else. We want everybody in this sector, I want nobody in this sector to say, I didn't have a chance to have my say. We're the voice of the finishes and interior sector, but our voice has to be built on a pair of ears, right? It's got to be listening to what the sector's telling us. So whatever your views, just fill them into the survey. You know, there's a box at the back of it that I'm not allowed to call, but we're calling it the rant box. So you know that right at the end of the survey, you get a chance to wax lyrical. You know, and again, we'll be interrogating all of that to understand. This is about understanding. So your job is to fill it in, and please, please, please do. Please give us a chance to start changing the world together.